Putin's army carried out a series of attacks in the Novokonstantinovka area. At the same time, the Ukrainian Armed Forces are carrying out counterattacks. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War have voiced the situation in the Sumy region. It is noted that a reserve officer of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that the enemy army is facing unspecified serious difficulties in the Kondratovka area. At the same time, Z Publics confirm that most of the settlement is under the control of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. One of the Russian war correspondents associated with the northern group of Russian forces stated that Ukrainian forces have blocked all landlines of communication of the Russian armed forces in the direction of Yunakovka. He also claims that the units of the 51st Airborne Regiment failed to fulfill the Kremlin's task of occupying Sadki. Ultimately, the enemy switched from the offensive to the defensive and refused to carry out further orders from the Russian Defense Ministry. In addition, the war correspondent denied the information that the Akhmat units attacked and cleared the positions of the Ukrainian Armed Forces in the Varachino area. On the contrary, the enemy planned to attack the Ukrainian Armed Forces, but retreated with losses. Last week, propagandists wrote that the Akhmat regiment had taken up positions in the Varachino area, but was refusing to move forward due to fear of Ukrainian Armed Forces drones. It is known that drone operators of the 155th Marine Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces are carrying out strikes against the Ukrainian Armed Forces in the Korchakovka area. Units of the 40th and 810th Marine Brigades, as well as the 9th Motorized Rifle Regiment, are operating in the Konstantinovka and Novokonstantinovka area. In the area of Andreyevka and Alekseyevka, occupiers from the 177th Marine Regiment are involved. In the area of Novonikolayevka, units of the 22nd and 1443rd Motorized Rifle Regiments have been spotted. Let us recall that analysts from Deep State noted that enemy assaults to the point of exhaustion began to fade away. According to Deep State data, the pace of Russian assaults remains high, but the Russians can no longer sustain attritional attacks on the same scale. It will surprise no one, but Russians cannot constantly maintain a stable intensity of fighting. The project review says, if in the first 10 days of July, an average of 186 assaults per day were recorded, then in the second there were already 178, and the third ended with a figure of 171.5. As of the first 2 days of August, the average daily number of assaults is 155. In addition, the tactics of attacks themselves are changing. If earlier the enemy went into battle in groups of several dozen people, now small groups of 2 to 3 people are more often thrown into the attack. The so-called flag-striking tactics have not gone unnoticed either. Demonstrative and risky operations whose purpose is not so much military as media. In such cases, Russian units try to plant a flag on a Ukrainian position for the sake of a photo and a report on propaganda channels, often at the cost of huge losses. Thus, the general activity of the enemy gradually weakens, and the methods used point to increasingly desperate and exhausting approaches.
Drones belonging to the Ukrainian army attacked the Archita railway station in the city of Frolovo, Volgograd region, Russia. As a result of the strike by kamikaze drones, a fire broke out in one of the service buildings at the station. Images from the area were circulated on local telegram channels. Traffic on the railway was suspended. There were no reports of casualties. Flights at Volgograd and Tambov airports were also temporarily suspended due to the drone attack.
Дежурка, железнодорожную дежурку, короче, где магазин хороший, напротив ЦДТ, короче, въебало.
Они взрывают станции, я тебе говорю, вот мне муж говорит, Котельниково, Октябрьский, они именно взрывают станции. И тут же он мне говорит, мне Коль говорит, Юлька, взорвали все станции, осталось, ожидайте прикол, 2 станции. Пожалуйста.
Он там вот где-то тут кружит. Где-то тут. В той стороне где-то. Где-то там. Опять в ту сторону полетел. Эх, ебать. Вот это я нихуя себя вышел. Очуметь, блядь.
Порел. Ебать, горит. Это где-то за 5-й школой это взорвали.
Блять, сильно въебало, ребята. Ебать. Ну нахуй.
In the Kharkiv region, the Ukrainian Armed Forces are doing everything to stop the occupiers and inflict as many losses on them as possible. On July the 30th, the hunt was successful for the 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems, Achilles. They managed to hit 5 units of enemy equipment. The Telegram channel of Regiment Commander Yuri Fedorenko shows how FPV drones destroyed a Russian tank and an infantry fighting vehicle. As a result of attacks by UAV operators, 2 infantry fighting vehicles and AFVs were disabled. On August the 1st, Fedorenko published a report, according to which in July, the 429th OP BPS was able to destroy and damage 4,513 units of enemy equipment, eliminate 206 occupiers, and another 249 were wounded. Achilles conducted combat operations in the area of Volchansk, Melovy, Dvorechnaya, and Kupiansk. Fedorenko added that in July, the number of targets hit increased by 862 compared to the previous period. Let us recall that it was in the Kharkov region on July the 26th that the commander of the 83rd Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 69th Motorized Rifle Division of Russia, Colonel Mikhail Lebedev, was liquidated. On July the 30th, information about the destruction of Putin's officer was officially confirmed on July the 30th. It turned out that in January 2025, Mikhail's father, also an officer in the Russian army, Viktor Lebedev, became the 200th on the front in Ukraine. Olga Drobaysheva, a deputy of the Kostroma Regional Duma, said that the colonel who led the offensive of Russian troops in the Veliko-Buluk direction had been transferred to the rank of 200th. In the Russian swamps, they are actively sculpting a hero out of Lebedev and have already dug a hole on the Alley of Heroes, which will last until the next flood, which is common for both Moscow and St. Petersburg. Earlier, on November the 30th, 2024, Ukrainian defenders eliminated Alexander Lebedev, who held the post of Deputy Commander of the 9th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the 51st Army of the Russian Armed Forces.